I'm Ryan Dieter with Real of Ohio, and we're going to dive into the data that the Columbus, Ohio board puts out for us. Again, this data is always a little laggy and timing. Just takes a few weeks to produce and publish and then get out there. And so we want to look at this data though and say, okay, what happened in the past? How do we look at this and help you make the best decision or keep you informed on what's going to happen in the future? So if you want to know where the market's going, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that right now. All right, here's the Columbus, Ohio board's data they put out for us. And as you can see here, this is for the Columbus region. And this data is actually available to everyone. It's on their website. You can go to their website. In fact, if you want to copy this, just leave a comment with your email address and I'll send it directly to you as well. Happy to do that for you and kind of talk about, as we talk about the data here, if you find this data helpful. But as we dive into this is obviously October 25. We're sitting here late November, headed into the Thanksgiving week, next week already. Again, this is always lagging. So we want to look at this data, not necessarily as what's going on right now, but what happened and how do we look at this and say, okay, this happened. How do we predict what's going to happen next? And so as we look at this, there's some surprises that took place that if you would have thought, in October, if you'd have said, hey, inventory is going to skyrocket by 21%, but yet prices are going to stay steady. That's exactly what happened. We actually have a little bit of an anomaly here where the average price, we'll jump into the average price here, is up 3.3% compared to last year. But if you go back, I have it pulled up here back to September last month, it's actually higher than the average price was last month. And typically what we see is prices month over month come down this time of year. And the fact that we see an average price actually higher than it was last year, and then the median price stayed exactly the same. So that means that we didn't see that dip month over month like we normally see. And if I scroll down to this chart, this is my favorite chart that we see that spells it out. You see this chart was on the downward spiral as we see month over month price decreases, and yet we had a flat line here. This is based on median price. So this is a graph on the median price. And so obviously it's flatlined, it's held steady, which, we see these anomalies every year a little bit, but, usually it's a down. We saw a little bit of a bump last year, this time of year. So maybe we're seeing that same trend, just not quite as, drastic as it was last year. So you're still seeing this almost like pre-holiday bump, and this maybe what's kept the prices steady is even though inventory's up, it's still pricing still steady in most areas. In fact, we saw a rise year over year. And so that's where we're still seeing appreciation. And this is a healthy market right now. The buyers have opportunities to come in, negotiate, and the hidden cost of the competitive market we had the last few years is not there as much anymore. There's still competitive areas for sure. If a house is positioned well, it's still getting multiple offers and still very competitive. But houses are taking, this is another thing that jumped is the days on market. Houses are just taking a little longer to sell, and that's steadily climbed over the last few years. And there's the hidden cost of a very competitive market that you kind of forget about as a buyer. In a market that's moving so quickly and so competitive, when you have multiple offers, you don't get to negotiate a whole lot. You don't get to ask for things to be fixed if they're broken during inspection periods. And you just kind of have to take what you get because there's other people that will take it as it is. And so right now the market's slowed down in a sense where buyers can actually negotiate some. And I'm seeing this live where they have a little bit more leverage to say, hey, the roof's not in great shape. We need this fixed, or the AC is not working properly. We need that fixed, or whatever it is. You have the ability to negotiate right now. So it's a little bit more, and this is actually, a normal market where things aren't great and buyers aren't satisfied with the condition. They can actually ask for it. And it keeps buyers from having to buy something and having to spend tens of thousands of dollars to fix it up. And it allows buyers to actually get in a house that they know that some of the major things are at least have been inspected and are working order. Unlike the last few years, sometimes you just had to say, take it as it is. And if not, you have to move on. So this is, in my opinion, a much healthier market than we've been in the last, five, pretty much 2020, really even 2019 to 2023. And we're seeing inventory rise, giving buyers more options, but yet we're still seeing good homes sell for top dollar and sell for more than they did last year. In fact, a lot of people are trying to think like, oh, we want to, especially buyers, we're waiting for the market to get even worse and waiting for prices to come down. And if you do that, one thing to think about as a buyer, if you're waiting for prices to come down year over year and, quote unquote, a recession in a sense, the problem with that is that if you buy on the down cycle, then the next year your house is going to be worth less. And so it's actually not a healthy thing for the buyers to be in a down cycle, to be where prices are going down, but more of a correction where what we're seeing now is prices are slowing much more. The appreciation rates are just so much lower than they were the last few years, which means that you can still buy something, you can still get something that's not drastically more than it was last year, but yet you still have growth. You still have positive growth year over year, theoretically on based on the numbers here. So that's a positive thing for a buyer to think about. And the positive thing for a seller to think about that if you have a really good house that's positioned and priced really well, it's still selling in most areas. Now, it's not selling for 10% more than it did last year. In some areas, they actually are, but most areas they're not. And you just got to price it accordingly. And so that's kind of the recap of the market, I want to say is, and here's the other thing. When you talk to buyers, if you talk to anyone that's actually looking for a house, there's more options, of course. Like this, the inventory obviously on paper is out there. But kind of what I'm hearing and seeing is that there's just not the great, like there's not houses that everybody wants. This idea sellers still have in their head that you just throw your house on the market and that you are going to get top dollar. You're going to get more than you would have last year. And the numbers are showing, hey, Joe down the street sold for this. Therefore, my house has got to be worth more than Joe's, even though I'm not going to fix up anything. I don't want to do any work to get it ready to sell. I'm just going to list it, 10, 20% more than what they sold because it's been a year. And so that those days are over. The days of having to position your house and do the little things that matter to buyers are here. And that's how you win in this market. If you want to win as a seller, you have to be willing to take the time to get your house ready to sell and not just put it on the market, slap it on online and hope that you're going to get, an astronomical number. Those days are gone for the most part. Now, some areas, as we show you here in a second, actually, I think I have it broken down. No, I don't. Let me go back here. This will show us. Um, if I pull up the area, the region, so if you go here in the Columbus Board website, you can actually go here. It breaks it down by area and school district, which is a fantastic tool that our region has. A lot of regions do not have the luxury of this, that you can go in here and say, okay, where are you looking to buy, and focus on that area and see is the trend, is the prices and the trends going up? Or are they going down? He says, are closed sales going up or down and contracts going up or down, average price, and really our new listings going up or down? Is inventory going up and down as well? So you want to see are prices up and down as inventory? Do you have more choices? Do you have less choices? Some areas actually have less choices and prices are obviously going up. So, it's kind of crazy. Here, for example, Blacklick, if we look here, had a 42% increase in average price. Yeah, the median price is only seven. So there's some obviously some high-end houses that have sold in the Blacklick area. That's why you got to take these numbers as a holistic number. And if you're looking for an area like for this example, Blacklick, I recommend clicking on the area and then looking at the year to date. So even though it has 42, this is a good example. I didn't even look at this before, but you look, it has 42 percent higher average price sale. This is compared to the last year. So if like $1 million house sold in this area, which there are a few of those in Blacklick, and if $1 million house sold in Blacklick, then no $1 million sold last year, this number is going to look a lot higher. Versus the year to date, you take this in consideration year to date, numbers are pretty flat. We see only 1.4 increase overall, even with this 42%. So this was probably negative till this month, is my guess. 2.9% median, and then just average price is really 0.5%. So very, very steady in the Blacklick area, and not surprising, that's kind of what I've seen as well. But so if you're looking in a certain area, that's really what you want to focus on. Another area that saw a lot of growth is the German Village this month, 37%. So let's just click on that and see, okay, yeah, we actually saw 37% increase, but only three, and then negative, 4.6 median sales price. So kind of again, a steady, somewheres, so kind of probably flatlining if you look at those numbers holistically, which I recommend. So you're not going to be paying astronomically more than last year, but at the same time, you can still win if you understand the fundamentals in this market. And it's getting back to the fundamentals of positioning houses and pricing them correctly, not just throwing them online and hoping for the best, is you really have to do the work that it takes to get sold and have a strategy to do that. And as a buyer, you actually can have a strategy now too to come in here and find something at least a stable price as it was the last few years and maybe negotiate on something, whether it's price or condition, and getting things that you may not have in the last few years. So, in my opinion, it's one of the healthier markets we've seen. Inventory is up, which means you have more options. It means we have more competition as a seller, but you have to just position it well compared to the competition as well. So, um, again, we're, to recap just the entire MLS, the entire area, we're seeing steady pricing, even though we're seeing inventory rise. And so it's really people are kind of talking about the sky falling a little bit, I think, in the, real estate world. And in my opinion, it's actually, can be positive for either a buyer or seller, whatever you want to look at it. Maybe it, gives you time that you can be patient as a buyer. You don't have to jump on anything and everything. At the same time, if you position your house well and it's priced well, there are buyers out there for it. Now, there's also, getting back to the fundamentals of the bookends. Typically, the high end properties tend to take longer and to sell, and you have to be more patient versus the low end, as well, things that need a ton of work. So if your house needs work and needs stuff, you have to be more patient as well. So those are just kind of getting back to those fundamentals and thinking about, if you don't want to do the work, you need to price it accordingly and you need to be more patient, as we're seeing days on market, definitely increase as well. And, the days of, if it doesn't sell in 3 days, don't panic. Back in COVID, the COVID eras, the 2020 to 2023, if your house made it to the first weekend and you didn't get an offer, there was something wrong with it. Now it's, you make it through the first 3 weeks, maybe the month, it's stretched out again to a normal length of time. So inventory is definitely on the rise, which, again, just, I don't want to harp on that too much, but it just gives you more options as buyers. But we're getting back to a healthier market, and a balanced market, it's still about they say it's about 6 months of inventory. We have 2.4, so we're still nowhere near, a true, balanced market, but yet buyers have a little bit more upper hand this time of year. All right, I want to jump down to this graph, as this is one of my favorite images to show people where the market's going and kind of show the history of the market and how it can be somewhat predictable. And I do feel like we're hitting the same markers we'd have the last few years for the most part. It's just, yeah, I think we're going to see less drastic swings maybe. But I say that, and last year we saw, the market just take off in the spring as well. So, we could see the same thing happen in 2026. And that's why I actually just produced a video this week on why I think the next few months may be the best window for buyers to consider buying. So go back and watch that video if you're interested. If you're thinking about even buying, watch that video. I think there's an opportunity now, but there's still opportunity to sell. And as I mentioned, if you talk to a lot of people out there about the inventory that's out there, a lot of buyers are just not happy, or, there's a lot of buyers still out there. They're like, I'm waiting for the right house, still. It's just not out there. And so if you can throw out if your house is the right house, you can win in this market. And making, you just have to do the little things to make it the right house if it's not already. So those are things to think about. I do think we're going to see, a strong spring market again, especially if interest rates continue to drop as they have and are predicting. And so it's going to allow more buyers to enter the market. And if there's other creative resources, creative ideas out there, whether you love or hate it, they're throwing ideas out there, 30-year mortgage or assumable mortgages. I think they're still a long ways away if they're even possible. But with that said, one thing to think about is that when we look at these lines, look at the data that we have, it is always delayed. It's always delayed by really, I mean, roughly 2 months, because, one, we don't get this data for 3 weeks after, really about 3 weeks into the next month. So we're looking at a month behind. And then this data is really driven by the closed sales, which are set when people get in contract. So that usually takes 30 days to get in contract and then close. So on average, and it can even take longer, so 30 to 40 days. So on average, we're waiting like 2 months behind. So if you're just relying on this data to say, okay, where's the market going? Or the headlines in the newspapers, that's what they use, is this data to say, oh, prices are up, prices are down. You're 2 months behind. That's why you have to have some vision to say, where's the market going? Understanding this data is lagging. And you can see this graph helps us understand, okay, are we seeing the same trends we've had in the last 15 years? It actually goes further. It just has a 10-year mark here. Are we seeing the same trends? I believe we are. I believe what happens this time of year, excuse me, I believe what happens this time of year is that sellers start to see that prices are going down, so they stop listing as much, and you don't see great houses hit the market. They're waiting until spring. If you don't have to sell, you wait till spring, and so the inventory that people want gets kind of dried up. But there's still buyers out there that are looking for the right house at the right price and are willing to buy the right house. They just haven't found it yet. So, putting the house out there, if it is the right house, you can have a win this time of year. At the same time, buyers, understand that they don't want to overpay for something. So you have to have a solid strategy to attract the right buyers and get a fair price in this market. So, but if you're a buyer, you can really take advantage of this downward cycle if the house pops up. Is A lot of people are also put their search on the sidelines and waiting until spring as well. So as you can see here, we're seeing the same trends. And in December, you think about, this is January, and so December tends to be the bottom of the market if you think about when people get in contract and they close in January. And then all of a sudden January hits, people start thinking, what do I want to accomplish in the new year? Maybe I'll buy a house. And you start seeing some of those people that are waiting to list their house start listing, and you see the market take off. The problem is that we don't see this market take off until about March, and it's already too late. If you decide to start start home buying in March, you're doing it with the rest of the group, and that now it's competitive. Now you're going to have to make over, list price offers, and you're going to have to start giving up some of your contingencies and things like that. So if you can take advantage of this moment and take advantage of the moment we're in, I don't think it's a bad time to buy personally. But you never know. There's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. You never know what can happen. This is just, based on what I've seen the last 15 years or so. So hopefully this is helpful. I would love to have a conversation with you if you're, want to know what's going on in the market, even if you're just, want to have a conversation about the market. I enjoy having these conversations. I enjoy diving into the data. So if you want to, if you have a different opinion, if you think the market's, tanking, and there's, you should never buy or never sell, I'd love to have a conversation with you and just hear your opinions. Leave a comment in the post if you have anything that you think you want to share. Thanks.